climate trend. Ayanda.
Hello again to you, Leanne. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that you've just discussed Africa Day. That is absolutely crucial and key to the discussions that will be taking place today. We're expecting former President Thabo Mbeki to deliver or present a report, an AU report on the illicit financial flows. This is money that is transferred illegally out of the African country. We're talking $1 trillion in the past few decades that has left the continent illegally. This is money that could have paid off Africa's debts. This is money that could develop the continent. And this is what we talk about when we speak about that resource curse. Now, to date, or recently, in the past couple of years, we've calculated, and it's still growing, 50 billion rands, or US dollars, I should say, annually that is lost to the continent through the illicit financial flow. So it is quite a serious problem. And these figures, Leanne, I must add, are quite conservative. As you know, we don't have all the data available. So these are just very conservative estimates. But to discuss this further, we're now joined by Dr. Bernadette Lahai. She's the leader of the opposition in Parliament in Sierra Leone. She's also a member of Parliament there and the chair of the Committee of Transport, Industry, Commerce, Science and Technology here at the Pan-African Parliament. Doctor, it's a good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Let's speak about the various ways in which money can be stifled out of the continent.
Thank you very much. First of all, we have to look at the level of transparency in financial transactions, because capital flight actually takes place where you have opacity in financial transactions. That is where you know there is no clarity and transparency in the way financial transactions are carried out, be it at the public level or at the private level. So a country where you have this sort of opacity, the tendency for illicit financial flows is high. With regards to the different ways there are illicit financial flows, first of all, we talk of money laundering. Money laundering is very, very key in illicit financial flows, because money that is acquired through dubious means is laundered through business transactions, through banks, through purchase of mineral concessions, through purchase of or export of minerals. So money laundering is one of the key ways of capital flight. Also tax evasions is also another, because you know that especially for international companies, mining companies that come into Africa, there are a lot of tax concessions just so that, you know, they can exploit our minerals. And if we don't have a very strong bargaining and negotiating power, then at the end of the day, we get a very small fair deal for our tax, for our resources, especially the exploitation of our natural resources.
I'm glad that you speak about a dual sort of responsibility here, because we're looking at the multinationals on the one hand, and also the secrecy jurisdiction, perhaps when they hide the money in offshore accounts, tax havens there, and perhaps a number of ways that they go about exploiting the African continent. But the onus is also on government in the particular African countries and also further afield to make sure that there is transparency. The African continent is an incubator, I suppose, for this kind of crime, because legislation sometimes has a lot of loopholes. The tax legislation is number one. And number two, we also have corrupt government officials as well. So speak to us about whether or not there's political will on the continent to rectify what we've seen happen in the past.
Yes, political will is very key in all of this. And political will could actually be identified wherein, you know, governments are willing and ready to put in very strong progressive legislation in terms of exploitation. In fact, in most countries where you have very strong political will, they are also part of the extractive industry transparency initiative, wherein, you know, the mining companies must declare, you know, what they pay, and the government itself also must declare what is paid to them by the mining companies, and the communities in which most of these multilateral corporations live and work, be it in mining, be it in big land-based agricultural production enterprises. The communities must also be very much involved in the negotiations for the mineral rights, in the negotiations with regards to profit sharing, and in the negotiation with regards to what sort of documents are to be put out. Because most of these companies, they hide behind, the problem of disclosure, secrecy and disclosure. And in most progressive rights and agreements, the issue of disclosure is now one that must be opened to the public. That is why when, for example, agreements are being made and environmental impact assessments are being made, you also have the management, you also have relocation. This is publicly disclosed, and the documents are put in very key public institutions, in the educational institutions, in the banking institutions, and also in parliament and in the different ministries, so that these documents are available. But let me also say that the market dues, are also very important at the local level, because there's a lot of also capital flights when market dues are not paid, when royalties are not paid, or even if they are paid. Our government officials sometimes, even before these things, they will negotiate a court. What is our court? We have a whole ministry sometimes, negotiating where maybe for the surface rent of 200 or 300 million is to be paid. He said, okay, you will pay $50 million or $100 million, and then, we negotiate for the remaining. So there is also a lot of issue of accountability and political will, not only on the part of the multilateral corporation, but also on the part of the government officials that do these negotiations and do also follow up on the implementation of some of these issues.
We'll have to leave it there, at least for now, but I think what I pick up from you is transparency is key. And it actually was a point raised also in that report to be presented by former head of state, President Thabo Mbeki, a little bit later today. He did, as I mentioned, beginning of this year, also present to the African Union. And he mentioned, Leanne, that this was an African problem that not only needed African solutions, but international solutions as well, because we know those secrecy jurisdictions, those areas where governments do not disclose, your Swiss banks, etc., who has saved how much where, that as long as there's secrecy around that, we'll never really know who the perpetrators are, not only in government, but also in the multinationals. So transparency is key. Those are some of the issues that we will be discussing, or we will be hearing the President speak to us about a little bit later today. But Leanne, it's over to you.